We are in 43a. We're trying to figure out how we know that a sukkah is supposed to be for day and for night. It's both by day and by night. It says Basukkah is Teshvu Shivas Yamim. In the sukkah, you should dwell 7 days. Now, does the word days mean to exclude nights? Or does the word days mean the 24-hour day? It could be either. So the Gemara is asking, how do we know that? The previous Gemara had mentioned that the that Rabbi Eliezer was of the opinion that machshirei lulav, that the preparations for the lulav are doicha Shabbos. They override Shabbos when it falls on the first day, when Shabbos falls on the first day of Sukkot. The machshir not only is the lulav override Shabbos, that you shake the lulav on Shabbos, but even the machshirei lulav, the preparations for cutting the lulav off the tree, all of that is doiche Shabbos. It overrides the Shabbos prohibitions, and you can do them on Shabbos according to Rabbi Eliezer, and he has a source for it because it says bayoim, that it doesn't have to say that word. It says an extra word in the Torah. It says bayoim harishain on the first. Could have just said barishain. Bayoim harishain on the first day, even if it's Shabbos. It's doicha Shabbos, and he learned it from bayoim that the shaking the lulav is even on when it's Shabbos. Now the rabbis use that word bayoim to teach you that it's by yoim v'loy balayla, that you shake the lulav. It has to be by day, not at night. There's no mitzvah of shaking the lulav at night. The mitzvah of shaking lulav has to be by day. And Rabbi Eliezer, he used that word by yoim to teach you about Shabbos. So how does he know that it's only by day and not by night? How does he learn it if you don't have that extra word? So he learned it because in the end of the pasuk, it says also Shivas Yamim. It says the word days. So he learns over there that it was by day and not by night. And the rabbis say from there, not necessarily would you be able to learn it from there, because over there, we would say that if it says yamim, we would compare it and learn it from the yamim that it says by sukkah, that just like sukkah is at night, I would think yamim that it says by the lulav is also night. So therefore, if you learn it from there, it's not a good source, the rabbis say. Therefore, we learn it from bayoim in the beginning part of the pasuk. Bayoim arishain, we learn that it's only applicable by day. Rabbi Eliezer uses bayoim for something else. He learns from the second half of the verse where it talks about asmachtim shivas yamim, which actually is learned to teach that the law of lulav in the Beis Hamikdash was done for 7 days, but that they're able to learn from there that it didn't have to say Shivas Yamim, and it says Yamim. So Rabbi Eliezer learns from there that it's by day and not by night. That the mitzvah of lulav is not by night. So the rabbis said that we wouldn't be able to learn from there because we would say it's similar to sukkah if we learn from there, because it says yamim and it says yamim by sukkah. So we would say probably you have to shake the lulav at night. So now the Gemara says, you would learn from, so sukkah you don't have, so sukkah is a mitzvah by day and by night. Why is it? It says yamim. Maybe it should only be by day. So that's where the Gemara says sukkah gufa minalon. How do we know sukkah itself is at night? It says yamim over there. Rabbi Eliezer says yamim sometimes means to teach you by day and not by night. The rabbis hold yoim teaches by day, would teach by day and not by night. So this yamim, how do we know sukkah is really supposed to be by day and by night? They have to dwell in the sukkah. Maybe it's just shivas yamim during the daytimes. And the Gemara goes through a whole back and forth. It says maybe we should learn from lulav. Lulav is only by day. Maybe we should learn from lulav. So sukkah now we're learning either from lulav or from the miluim, the shivas yemei hamiluim. The last 7 days of the month of Adar were the 7 days of inauguration, and there was also a term over there used in the pasuk, teishvu yoimam v'layla. Pesach oil moed teishvu yoimam v'layla, and so it says shivas yamim for 7 days. So it says the word yamim there, and it mentions day and night. So over there, they were supposed to stay. The Aaron and his children were supposed to stay. Aaron HaKohen and his children were supposed to not leave the Oyel Moed, the entrance of the tent of meeting. Meaning they were meant to stay by the Mishkan for all those 7 days, and they weren't allowed to leave. So it meant by day and by night. So the Gemara understands that we have to figure out the mitzvah of sukkah. Do we learn it from lulav or do we learn it from miluim? Lulav is only a mitzvah by day. Miluim is a mitzvah day and night. So where do we learn it from? So the Gemara says, what is it similar to? And the Gemara says, well, maybe we should learn it from something that the mitzvah is at least all day, not just once. It's a one moment drive-by mitzvah, so to speak. It's a mitzvah, one time, one moment mitzvah. And then there's mitzvahs that are applicable all day. So the mitzvah of sukkah is, of course, a mitzvah that is throughout the day. And the mitzvah of miluim was for sure throughout the day. They had to stay in the Mishkan for all those 7 days. So those mitzvahs are throughout the day. Lulav is a one moment mitzvah. You shake it, goodbye. You're done. You could do mitzvah min hamuvchar. You're allowed to cherish the mitzvah, walk around with it. But the actual mitzvah is a one moment mitzvah. So which one should we learn lulav from? Should we learn lulav from the thing it's similar to? It's similar to a mitzvah that's throughout the day, just like sukkah would be a mitzvah throughout the day. So miluim is a mitzvah throughout the day. Let's learn it from miluim. It's much more similar to miluim than lulav. Lulav is a one moment mitzvah. Sukkah is a mitzvah throughout the day. So then we'll say miluim is at night as well. Sukkah should also be at night. But then the Gemara says, no, maybe we should go away from that way of thinking, kaleich laderech zu, and let's go towards another way of looking at it. Maybe we should learn something that's applicable for the future. That's what we should learn from something else. We should learn one thing that's applicable for the future generations from something else that's applicable for future generations, rather than learning from the miluim that was a one-time thing in the past. That's not a mitzvah that applies every year. That's not a mitzvah that is something applicable in the future. It's not noyeg l'doires. It was a hiras sha'ah. It was a momentary a teaching from heaven to do it for that time in the desert, in the Mishkan, and it's not something that's applicable. So that's another way of looking at it. So on the one hand, we could learn from Miluim because it's a mitzvah all day. On the other hand, we should learn from Lulav because it's a mitzvah that is noyeg l'doires. So the conclusion of the Gemara, and this is on 43b, is that we learn from some type of a Gezerah Shava that Teishvu, it says Teishvu by Sukkah, and it says Teishvu Yom V'Layla by Miluim. So we learn from Miluim that it's Sukkah is a mitzvah by day and by night. Yes, Ezra.
Why don't you just go back to the to Bereshit in the first time the word Yom appears, or it says Vayivoke Yom Echad, and so. Right. Yom is by definition both day and night. And why go through all of this, not just use that as proving?
Right. So what we're saying is that we're not proving that either Yom means only day or maybe it means day and night. We agree that it could mean both options. The Gemara is aware that it could mean both options. The question is, which one do we choose for each mitzvah? So what you're saying is we have a proof. You're right. You do have a proof. You have a proof that Yom sometimes means day and night. But there's also the concept that Yom could specifically mean day and not night, like the rabbis learn. It says by Yom, by Lulav, to teach you that it's only by day and not by night. And because of that, um, there's a second meaning to the word as well. So it's not that we're proving we want to prove what it means. No, we want to prove what it means here. How do you know here where it talks about sukkah? What does it mean here when it speaks about sukkah? So that's where the Gemara is. So what you're saying is right. Of course, it sometimes means day and night.
But
Which one does it mean by sukkah? What?
The fact is, it says Tishvu Shivat Yamim, and there's no letter before it says Bayom or anything like that. And what I'm saying is that I have the proof from Bereshit where it says Yom Echad without a letter before it that says this or that or anything else. There's no there's no modification of the word. So therefore, from the way that I look at it, that is in fact the proof as to why it should be both day and night.
Yeah, the Beis Hamikdash, they shook the lulav
I thought we were just
7 days, and it says Usmachtem ufnei Hashem Elokechem shivas yamim. Are you going to learn according to your way of learning? It would come out that in the Beis Hamikdash they should shake the lulav at night as well, because it says Teishu Usmachtem ufnei Hashem Elokechem shivas yamim. So that means 7 days at night as well. In the Beis Hamikdash, they would shake lulav. So what comes out is that it's not a definite thing. It could mean specifically day, or it could mean night. In other words, the Gemara does not consider that a proof. In fact, that we have a proof the opposite. That we don't do that. We actually we don't say that yomim if it doesn't have a prefix or a suffix. It always means day, both day and night. It could mean days, by the days. Yeah, and you could also say vayera vayiviker, that because it says erev and viker, that's why over there yoim means day and night. But maybe normally days would only mean days. You could maybe argue and say, that vayera vayiviker yoim echad is, well, when it says night and day, it tells you, oh, I'm referring to the yoim that means night and day. But when it doesn't say yoimam v'layla, maybe it only means day. Maybe that's a different way of looking at it. You know what I mean? Like you could disagree, you could argue on that. It's that proof itself, maybe. I have to take a look in the commentary, see if anyone brings up what you're saying. I like your proof, Ezra. I'm just saying, like, maybe there's other ways of, and it seems like the Gemara obviously doesn't accept that. We see from the fact that it's usmachtem that is not at night in the Beis Hamikdash. Yes, Jeffrey.
So, but first of all, you could argue that it's night and day with some kinds of simcha, like the simchas Pesach Shoeva. But the thing is this: I think what the theoretical basis is in the Gemara is they take all the psukim that have to do with sukkahs, and they say, which thing about sukkahs do we learn from each of these psukim or each of these phrases? So it's like an economy of phrases. You have to make sure that each of the different laws is covered by one of the phrases. You have to decide which one is which. So you have to start another way, not first with the word yomim or yom, but start with the psukim that have to do with sukkahs. And then you work it out. And it would be good if the Gemara would just make a list first and say, we have all these psukim. How do we learn about the holiday in the most economical way from all of these sentences? But I think that's really what the rabbis are doing.
I'm a little confused. What are you like? Are you asking? Are you saying a statement?
I'm suggesting that the theory is that you collect all of the psukim that have to do with the holiday.
Okay.
And then you ask your questions and say which configuration indicates which fact about the holiday, rather than to go somewhere else first to look up all the uses of yom and yomim and to come up with such a far-fetched comparison as the installation of the Kohanim.
So you're asking a question. Why does the Gemara look elsewhere? Why don't we look in our own backyard, in our own paragraph about Sukkot?
Right. And I think maybe that's behind. We have the summary of the thoughts rather than the initial job, which is let's make a list of all the psukim. For Pesach, there are even more psukim. It's mentioned and discussed much more. In Rosh Hashanah, there's much less. So I think that's really what they're doing. They want to account for why we have all the different psukim. Each one has to teach us something. That's why it says, well, Rabbi Yehuda says that this sentence means this and this usage means that. And the rabbis may disagree. We have the summary later on, but each of them has made a list already.
So what you're trying to say is that what we are getting here is only a summary of what the real discussion was. And if you say what you're saying, it sort of explains why we're not getting the full picture. That's, in other words, you're bothered with the fact that why aren't we getting the full picture? And your answer is probably because they had the full picture in front of their discussions, and we're just getting the synopsis of their discussion. That's the
most disagreement. We have the most disagreement.
Right. All right. Maybe. Yeah. I don't know. I never thought about it that way. It's a.
But there's somewhere along the line, there's a principle about how you go about this.
Right. I mean, I'm not really sure. Like, what do you think did they gain from if they like? What are you looking for in the other psukim that talk about sukkah? That you're looking for a hint to see if it hints anything about the night, and they didn't find any.
Right.
So I'm not sure why it's bothering you. So maybe they're not mentioning it because they didn't find any hints about night, and that's why they didn't bring all the psukim about sukkah. Because why are you bothered with the fact that they didn't? Why don't we look through all the psukim of sukkah, and that's what's bothering you? They should look through all the psukim, and then we'll decide what it means.
I'm sure
and
they
answer
have
it, and then you said that, but they're relying on a summary. But the summary doesn't mention they didn't find any other psukim. So maybe this is the full extent of their discussion. And they actually didn't find it. They did look into all the psukim. They didn't find any hints.
I'm sure they did that, but it's easier for us to look at it that way. We only see the result. But if you really want to go about it in a fundamental way, like they did, generation to generation, they're not all talking in the same period.
So
that each of them first started out with a list of all the psukim about the holiday.
I guess your main point, Jeffrey, is that that for all of us, we should really be doing it right. We should really know the psukim on the forefront of our minds, so that for us it's like clear. It's like the kindergarten.
And they not only did they know that, but they knew all the psukim. They knew all the psukim, and they knew where to find all of the others also. So so that's why they go to talking about the Kohanim and having to stay in the the whole 7 days, day and night, because there they found, in addition to saying they have to teshuvu, it says day and night. So maybe this teshuvu has to do with day and night. But first they collect all the sentences, and I think that Ezra would have less trouble if you think about it from that way, rather than go looking now for where all the uses of Yom. I could show you Yomim that means a year.
Right, that's true. Yomim sometimes means a year. Imagine sitting in a sukkah for 7 years.
Right, exactly. So it's
all right. Anyway, I hear you, Jeffrey. Yeah, it's an interesting point. It's something to think about. Okay, David. Yes.
Yeah. What about Yom? We say Yom HaShishi, which is at night.
Right. It is the sixth day. Starts at night. The sixth day starts at night.
He uses the word Yom.
I'm sorry. Say that again. What?
And he uses the word Yom.
The word Yom. Right. Yeah. No, there definitely are places where Yom means day and night, and definitely places where Yom refers specifically to day. So that's really where our Gemara is coming from. Yeah. Thank you. So that's your answer to Ezra's question, basically, David. That you see right in the actual 6 days of creation, it uses Yom for But that's what David was. That's I'm sorry. You're proving Ezra's point really. Ezra was saying that also that Yom means night as well, and so you're
Yeah,
just giving another proof. But
I was saying that the
right,
word Yom is referring to an actual mitzvah that we
day
do
of
at night. That we do
day
at
and
night.
night. Yeah, day and night. Yeah, that you're proving Ezra's point, and it's true. Yom does mean both, but it also could mean only day. Okay, so bottom line is that we have a Gzeira Shava. I'm going to just go over. I don't know if we actually get to the two dots? Maybe we did on 43b. Let me just start on the bottom. Talmud Loimar, the last two words on page 43a. Talmud Loimar, the Torah teaches us, or the Pasuk teaches us, and now we turn to page 43b, the top of the page, 43b. Teshvu, it says Teshvu by Sukkah and Teshvu by Miluim. So the Gemara says Teshvu l'Gzeira Shava. That it says Teshvu to teach us that we have to learn a Gzeira Shava, that when it says the same word in two places, we have a tradition about this, that it's meant to teach us to compare the laws of one of them to the other. So Nemar Khan Teshvu, it says here Teshvu by Sukkah. V'nemar b'miluim Teshvu, and it says by the miluim Teshvu, that's Teshvu Yomam v'layla. Then by day and night they're supposed to dwell in the Oyhel Moyed, the tent of meeting, the Mishkan. They're supposed to dwell there. The Koyanim are supposed to dwell there for those 7 days of the inauguration. Malahalon Yomim va'afilu Leila, just like over there when it says Yomim, it includes nights as well. Afkan Yomim va'afilu Leila is here also. It means day. It means Afkan Yomim. Here also when it says days, it means full days. Va'afilu Leila, even nights are included. And the Sukkah you're supposed to dwell in at night. Okay, so that's the end of that little piece. Now the Gemara jumps to Arava. Arava Shiva Ketza. The Arava is done for either 7 days or 6 days. How is the Arava done for 7 days? Arava was this mitzvah that they would do in the Beis Hamikdash, where they would do a circle and circle, make a circle around the Mizbeach, and then they would put the Aravos and stand them up by the Mizbeach, by the altar. And so this mitzvah of Arava was either done 7 days or 6 days. The way it was done 7 days, if, as we'll soon see, if the 7th day fell on Shabbos, they would do this mitzvah for 7 days. And if a different day of the 7 days of Sukkot fell on Shabbos, they would skip that day to do this mitzvah of Arava. So the Gemara says that Arava Shiva Ketzad. How do you have that Arava would be done for 7 days? Arava B'Shvi'i, my time of Dochya. I'm sorry, the Mishnah had said Arava Shiva Ketzad. How do you have it for 7 days? And the Mishnah clarified when it falls on Shabbos, like I just explained. Now the Gemara starts off and says Arava B'Shvi, my time of Dochya Shabbos. Why is the Arava Doicha Shabbos? Why does it override Shabbos on the 7th day? And of course, the simple understanding is that the Arava is muktzah. It's not supposed to be handled on Shabbos. And yet, there's a mitzvah Arava. And so the mitzvah of Arava, when it falls on Shabbos on the 7th day falls on Shabbos, it pushes off the laws of Shabbos. And the Gemara asks, why is it Doicha Shabbos? And why didn't the rabbis make some type of a decree, just like they made either for Lulav or for the other days of Arava? You know, why is it Doicha Shabbos if it falls on the 7th day? Rashi says that the question is, why isn't it similar to Lulav, that just like they made a decree that lulav, we're afraid someone's going to we're afraid that someone's going to carry it in the Rishus Harabim, so they should make the same gzeira by Arava, that we're afraid someone's going to carry it. And the fact that Rashi adds, he says, Hachanami lesa min hatoira bigvulin kishar yemei achag legabe lulav. Here, we don't have any biblical obligation of Arava on the other days of Sukkot, and it would only be a mitzvah applicable in the Beis HaMikdash. It's not applicable, it's not a mitzvah that's outside of the Beis HaMikdash, biblically, and therefore, this would not be a case to be doicha Shabbos, to override the laws of Shabbos. Instead, we should make a gzeira. What is Rashi saying? What Rashi is saying is that the previous Gemara that we learned mentioned, it was a little confusing because it did jump back and forth between one way of looking at it, another way of looking at it. But the understanding that we concluded with at that point of the previous Gemara, when we learned the previous Gemara, was that Rishoin the Isa min hatoira bigvulin loy gazru b'hu rabbanon. When there was something that was biblically obligated, not only in the Beis Hamikdash, but even in the outside of the Beis Hamikdash, like the first day of Lulav, that's a biblical obligation everywhere. So in such a case, the rabbis didn't uphold their decree. They didn't make their decree applicable on that day. And therefore, if the first day fell on Shabbos, according to the previous Gemara, you would actually shake the Lulav on Shabbos on the first day, because it's Isa min hatoira bigvulin. It's applicable even outside of Israel, outside of the Beis Hamikdash. It's even applicable biblically. So there, the rabbis let go of their decree. They said, we're not making our decree. That's a biblical obligation everywhere. We're not doing it. But the rabbi, what the Gemara is asking here is, Arava, you don't have that claim. Arava is not biblically everywhere. It's only in the Beis Hamikdash. Oh, it's only in the Beis Hamikdash. We should have the problem of the rabbi's decree. The rabbi should make a decree that you shouldn't carry it. So you might come to carry it. We should make a decree. So the Gemara answers, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says that even though maybe you should make such a decree, but the rabbis let go of it on when it falls on the seventh day, to emphasize. They said, we want to publicize that this mitzvah is biblical, even though it doesn't say it clearly in the Torah. And the understanding is that we'll see later that there were those that questioned this mitzvah, the Baitusim. They argued and said, what do you mean it doesn't say anywhere about Arava and the Torah? But we understand it to be a mitzvah min Torah, even though it's not clearly spelled out. And we want to publicize that. So if we take it even on Shabbos, it'll be publicized that it's a special mitzvah min Torah, and it overrides the laws of Shabbos. Now, we'll see later on page 44 about what the source is. We actually did see a little of it before. We saw that it said arvei, and one opinion said, oh, arvei plural means that there's two mitzvahs with arava, and the other way of understanding it is that it's a halacha l'Moshe Sinai. Anyway, we'll see it later as well. We're going to see it on the next page. But in the meantime, the Gemara is saying that we need to publicize that it's biblical, because there were those that argued and said, what do you mean it doesn't say it anywhere in the Torah? We didn't have to do it. They argued with it. And therefore, we override Shabbos when it falls on the seventh day. Now, the Gemara asks, if this is so, lulav nami lidchi, even the mitzvah of lulav should also be pushing off Shabbos on the other days, not only on the first day, because of this new reason. You got another, you want to be mafarsim, you want to publicize, to publicize that it's biblical. So you want to publicize that it really, we don't shake the lulav biblically outside of the Beis Hamikdash on the other 6 days of Sukkot. We only have a mitzvah on the first day outside of the Beis Hamikdash on a biblical level. So according to the understanding until this Gemara we had was, okay, so we're not going to allow it to be doicha Shabbos. We don't allow the mitzvah of lulav to override Shabbos. But now that we just said that even if you have a mitzvah that is only applicable in the Beis Hamikdash, that also can override Shabbos. If you want to be mefarsem, you want to publicize that it's biblical, let's do the same thing with lulav and say, you know what? Lulav on the 4th day is biblical in the Beis Hamikdash. So let's publicize it. We should be mefarsem, publicize that it's min haTorah. So lulav nami lidchi k'dei levasu b'shur min haTorah should publicize it's biblical. Okay, you're right. It doesn't have a law that's biblical even outside, and that was what we were thinking of until now, that's why it overrides the first day, because it's biblical outside of Israel, where the rabbis didn't make their decree and such a thing. But here now we have a new idea. We want to publicize things that are biblical. Let's publicize lulav, that it's a biblical obligation, and we should let it override the laws of Shabbos, and mainly the law of muktzah is what we're dealing with here. So the Gemara says that lulav is a gzeira derabba. Lulav is a gzeira that we're afraid you're going to carry. So it doesn't override that. So the Gemara says, oh, it only overrides muktzah. It doesn't override the gzeira that we're afraid you're going to carry. So then Arava also, Yachi Arava Nami Nigzar, Arava also should have the gzeira of Rabbah that we should be afraid that you're going to carry. So if that's so, in other words, that there's a concept of a gezerah, of being a decree that we're afraid you're going to carry. So our Rava, we should be worried about that. The Gemara answers that our Rava shluchei bezdin ma'asilov. By our Rava, there's no problem of carrying, because it's not everyone does this mitzvah by Rava. It was done by the bezdin's emissary. Did that? It wasn't done by the whole community. So no, whether they're going to carry. This is the scholars are the ones who are doing it. These are people, emissaries of the bezdin of the Shav. They're the ones who do this mitzvah of Arava. It's not a mitzvah on each individual. So the lulav is l'koil maser. Lulav is given over to everyone. Everyone does the mitzvah of lulav. So the Gemara says, so Arava, there's no problem of the gzeira of Rabbah. So then the Gemara says, Ihachi kol yom anami lidchi. Let all the days of Arava push off the laws of Shabbos, and any day that if you're not worried that a person's going to sin, it's only an issue of muktzah, let every day be doicha Shabbos. Whenever Shabbos falls in Sukkot, we should do the mitzvah of Arava. So the Gemara answers, Asi lepak puke belulav. It's going to minimize the importance of lulav. People will be mezalzel. They'll I'm sure of a good word for they'll lessen their respect. They'll disrespect a lulav. It'll cause disrespect for lulav. Asi lepakuke belulav, that it's not as valuable as the mitzvah by Rava. That the lulav doesn't override Shabbos only on the first day, and Arava overrides Shabbos every single day of the holiday. So really, in logic, maybe we should do that, because Arava is a mitzvah in the Torah, and there's no reason to make a decree that people are going to carry it. So really, Arava should override Shabbos. It's only an issue of muktzah. It should override Shabbos, and there's no reason to make any decrees, because it's only a few individuals, the shluchei bezdin, the emissaries of bezdin, that are going to be doing the Arava. So we don't have to worry about them carrying on Shabbos. They'll bring it from Erev Shabbos, and it's a mitzvah. The kohanim go bring it. The shluchei. what does it mean, shluchei bezdin? It's the koyanim who really do it. So what does the Gemara mean, shluchei bezdin? The shluchei bezdin, the emissaries of bezdin, they're going to be the ones who bring it to the Beis Hamikdash. The koyanim are the ones who will dance with it. So the shluchei bezdin are going to bring it before Shabbos. They'll know not to carry it on Shabbos. Shluchei bezdin, these are the emissaries of bezdin. They'll bring it there. The koyanim are going to go around. They'll be makif the mizbeach. They surround the mizbeach. They go around the mizbeach with the ravas. They'll do that on Shabbos. That's no problem. It's bringing it there that will worry. No, there's nothing to worry about. It's shluchei bezdin are bringing it there. So really, in essence, Arava should be done every single day. Whenever it falls on Shabbos, you should still do the Arava mitzvah. It's biblical mitzvah. But you know what's going to happen? Lulav, we can't do that because lulav, we're afraid someone's going to carry, and the lulav is a mitzvah on every single individual. So therefore, we say, you know what? Arava also. One day you could override Shabbos when it falls on the seventh day, but to allow you every single day it falls on Shabbos, that's not going to happen. So the Gemara asks, "V'lidchi b'yom tov rishon," let it push off. The mitzvah of Arava should, just like lulav pushes off the first day, let Arava push off the first day, just like lulav. And that's it. The Gemara says, then loy mukha milsa, it won't show that Arava is a biblical mitzvah. Omri, people will say lulav hu dekadachi, that it really lulav is what is pushing off the laws of Shabbos, and lulav is really what's pushing off the laws of Shabbos, and once you're pushing off the laws of Shabbos for lulav, you push off the laws of Shabbos for Arava. But really, Arava is not a biblical mitzvah. People will say it's well, you're pushing it off anyway. For lulav, you could include the Arava as well, as no problem. You know, you could do the Arava when it falls on Shabbos. So therefore, we give Arava a special day of its own. The Gemara says, why do you pick the seventh day? Pick any of the other days. The Gemara says, if you're not going to do the first, do the last. Like Bashvi, put it on the last day, the seventh day, which is the last. In other words, instead of just picking one of the days in the middle, it's either the first or the last. The Gemara says, if this is so, then even nowadays, we should, when there's no Beis Hamikdash, we should be mafarsem, publicize that the mitzvah of Arava and the Beis Hamikdash was a biblical mitzvah, and therefore we should also do the Arava. That's a minhag neviim, that it's that they established in the time of the second Beis Hamikdash. They established this minhag neviim to this. The prophets made accustomed us. They established a tradition to do the Arava mitzvah outside of the, after the Churban. They said that that we should do the mitzvah of Arava. So the question the Gemara is asking is that why don't we do that as a commemoration of the Arava and the Beis Hamikdash? We should also have it override Shabbos. So the seventh day, let's pick that seventh day and say that now also we should do it. We should do it on Shabbos. And the Gemara answers that Anan lo yadinan b'kivur de yarcha. We don't know the kavios. We don't know the real day that Yom Tov falls, because there's always a question of, is today the Yom Tov, or is it the next day that's the Yom Tov? It's always that question, and therefore we can't have it push off Shabbos. The Gemara says, but inhu, there in Eretz Yisrael, where they know when the Yodi b'kivur the Archa, they know when the holidays are because they would rely on the witnesses. Lidchi, they should push off the Shabbos when the holiday, when the seventh day comes. Let it push off. Let's do the Arava mitzvah on Shabbos. The Gemara answers, Ki asa bar Hedya amar lo ikla. Bar Hedya said, you know what? It never falls on Shabbos. The 7th day of Sukkot can't fall on Shabbos. It's not a problem. But the Gemara says, no. Ki asa Ravin v'chol nechusei. Ravin came, and all those that would come down to Bavel. The Amri, they said, Ikla, it does sometimes have a light dachi, and it doesn't push off Shabbos. So the Gemara says, Vela kasha. So then you have a kasha. Why don't we do this on Shabbos, the Arava? So Rabbi Yosef, man leimalon da Arava ben Atila, who told you that Arava is a mitzvah to take? Dilma bezakifa, maybe the real mitzvah in the Beis Hamikdash was only where they would put the Arava and stand it up on the side of the Mizbeach, but the waving it or the carrying it, that's not the mitzvah. In the Beis Hamikdash, the mitzvah was in the Beis Hamikdash, the mitzvah was that they would only stand it up there. So when we do it after the Churban, our mitzvah of Arava that we're doing as some type of a commemoration is not exactly the same as the way they did it then. Because the way they did it then was to stand it by the Mizbeach. We don't have a Mizbeach. So for us, it's a very different mitzvah now. If the mitzvah then was Zekifa, was standing it up the Aravas and placing them there. So that mitzvah is not going to be publicized. If we override Shabbos and we try to publicize this mitzvah, it's not going to happen because it won't be publicized, because we won't see, we're not doing the same mitzvah that they're doing over there the way they did it in the time of the Beis Hamikdash. So even though our mitzvah is drabanan, in the Gemara's question was, it should still be a zeicher, it should still be shown that publicized that it overrides Shabbos. Now, there is a big problem with this, with this question, this whole discussion, because if it's only drabanan, the rabbinic decree of the prophets, that said we should do this mitzvah of Arava, why aren't we scared? And after the Beis Hamikdash, people are going to carry the Arava and it should override Shabbos, is the Gemara's question. It should override Shabbos. We want to publicize the 7th day. We're going to publicize that it's a mitzvah min HaTorah, at least the originally. Rashi brings down, minag neviim hi b'gvulin. Rashi brings down that after the Churban, we'll see on page 44 that it's a minag neviim on the 7th day, and so Rashi says that it's the shluchei bezdin should do it, and even if it falls on Shabbos, to show that the Beis Hamikdash, it was a mitzvah, and because the 7th day, they never were geyser, they never made any decree not to do it on the 7th day. So if it falls on Shabbos, and therefore we should do it even on the 7th day. Not everyone. The Shluchei Bezdin will do it. So the Gemara's answer is, first the Gemara wants to say, well, it never falls on Shabbos. Then the Gemara says that maybe it does sometimes fall on Shabbos, but it's a different issue that that it's really very different than the way they did it in the Beis Hamikdash, because they would put it on the side of the Mizbeach, and we don't have that. So therefore, it won't be publicizing this concept that the Arava is biblical, because we're doing it different than the time of the Beis Hamikdash. Okay, we're going to stop here. Sei gesund, everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Rabbi. Thank you.